Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a podcast where we cover media, politics, news, nonsensical headlines, hanging out. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Jason.
And this is Jason's turn.
Strap on your Kevlar vest into the trenches.
All right, here we go. From CNN. You guys remember Doug? Doug the giant potato? Well, they were submitted to the Guinness Book of World Records. DNA test reveals Doug the giant potato is not, in fact, a potato.
And you're not the father.
He is a gourd tuber. So the tuber is this mega structure underground that contains water and holds it for the plant to a giant gourd. So denied.
It's in the vicinity, right? Because isn't tuber what it means to be a potato family?
Yeah, it's in the same family, but it's not a potato.
This is like this has strong. They did surgery on a grape meme, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, CNN. We really needed this. We needed this follow up on the 2021 record breaking article about Doug the potato.
Wait, his name is Doug, like to dig, as opposed to Doug, like the name?
Yeah, it's a pun because they dug him out of the ground.
Yeah, I mean he's a potato.
Fantastic.
Oh, it's a couple from New Zealand. Their life's easy for them. Okay.
Yeah.
It's low stakes.
You can DNA test a potato?
Yeah. It's all got DNA. It's a living thing.
I don't know.
Plants have DNA.
I guess so.
It's just DNA. We have DNA.
Just draw some potato blood.
The idea of DNA testing a sandwich just strikes me as very odd.
This is why you're not a scientist.
This is why.
This is the reason.
Did they at least do a whole Maury setup for this? Like, you are not a potato.
No, they got a rejection letter from the Guinness Book of World Records. I was like, get fucked. It's a tuber.
They got countersued.
This is just Big Potato protecting their interests.
Exactly. Yep. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, is there independent scientific verification of Doug's status?
Yeah, are the cyber ninjas on this?
It was stolen from him.
If there's more to the story, I'm sure we will see a trio follow up.
This country's top potato podcasters.
It also feels like is Pluto, a real planet? Like it's one of these. It's like one of these controversies. Like it doesn't actually matter because they're not changing what it is, just what they call it. Like it's still a cool thing to find, but
classification is a lot of what science is about. So
sure. I'm not saying they're wrong.
It also feels insensitive to do this so close to St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, which is I'm sure widely practiced in New Zealand.
Massive Irish population there.
All right, now for an article I couldn't understand.
Unlike this very sensical one.
Yeah, it made perfect sense to me. Also from CNN. Is a recession coming? Alan Greenspan says the answer is in men's underwear. I don't know what the fuck this means.
Like this little dick energy. Like
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Because I was under the impression we were kind of already in the middle of a recession. Am I wrong? Aren't we going through a kind of large recession because of COVID anyway?
And it's all relative, right?
Why there's bubbles in markets,
like compared to other moments of the long-term recession that we've been in, and COVID itself. There's news articles being like, "Look, we're doing better than we were in the first few months of the pandemic." It's like, well, okay, that doesn't mean we're doing well. But yeah, I think most media has been asserting that we are not currently in a recession.
All right, so maybe I'm too focused on the first part. So what's the deal with the second part?
I almost prefer the first three words weren't there, because then we could have a cryptic, vaguely sexual thing from Alan Greenspan, which would be very amusing to me.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
do you think he's being literal or metaphorical?
Oh, I don't think he knows how to be metaphorical.
Yeah, I assume this is literal as well. My unfunny actual guess is that he's making some joke that's like, women buy underwear all the time because they want to seem like lingerie or sexy, whereas men only buy underwear when they're flush with cash. Like men are going to go wear their old stinky, fly bitten holes in the underwear if they don't have the spending money.
Yeah,
And
they only replace it when they absolutely need to, as
Right.
opposed to these.
So if no one's buying men's underwear, then we don't have the reserves of cash to
Yeah.
sustain the economy.
It does appear to be that, according to some loser who's like listening to what Greenspan has to say. Like man underwear sales are stable, so if there's a dip, it's like a big indicator. It's like a red flag.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's good.
It's like a very stupid thing to say, that, like, you know, you could also see, like, oh, are people buying less food? Are people buying
Yeah.
fewer home? Like, there's so
Exactly.
many metrics you could use that
Yeah.
aren't creepy and sexualized.
This is the best example of a necessity that you can think of.
What's that underwear company, Fruit of the Loom? I'm
Yeah.
trying to make a Fruit of the Loom and Grapes of Wrath joke, but I just can't do it myself. So I leave it up to you, audience. I give you the equation, now you solve it.
Yeah, I don't want Alan Greenspan talking about underwear.
Anything.
Well,
I
yeah,
feel
but
mildly violated just by association to man's underwear. Yeah, I am curious if they cherry picked this or if this is like his, McDonald's peace theory or whatever.
This is his opus, like
Yeah.
it's his magnum opus of this my final submission to the economic world of my great
After 50 years of
my great
research.
thesis.
this feels like one of those like glib, like Malcolm Gladwell or like Freakonomics kinds of things where you're like, I've solved the files.
Right.
It turns out this elaborate social issue is solvable by one stupid trick.
I've spent 10,000 hours in this pair of underwear.
All right, we're not still going goblin mode.
Let's move to, let's finish up with CNN with a good one. J.K. Rowling hits back at Putin after he likened Russia to her in rant against cancel culture.
Yeah. So, audience, for why this is amusing to us in particular is like a few days ago we just recorded our episode on the fucking uselessness and meaninglessness of cancel culture as a form of attack, and how it's always going to be useful in serving the right wing because it's a meaningless thing.
So.
Well, yeah, but like in incredible needless death, arguably.
But I think there's a lot. Yeah.
Like, what, 2 days after that episode was recorded, Putin tries to appropriate cancel culture for his own purposes. It's just like, you can't make this shit up. Which I think is literally what Stephen King said when making fun of it.
I know Stephen King made fun of her a few years ago when she first was saying turf shit. But I think there's a lot of meat on this. What do you think, Aiden?
I don't know if I would say there's a lot of meat on the bone, but I would say, it's a lot of news. It's like you have to be a bit irony poisoned to enjoy, find humor in. This just made me laugh when I read it. I'm like, this is the best shit I've seen in a while. It's so funny that Putin would say that he's being canceled. That language is being used.
He's not saying he's being canceled. He's saying Russia's being canceled.
Russian culture is being canceled because of economic sanctions.
But the reason I love this is because it's a race to the bottom. It's everyone's trying to race to escape from the more deplorable person. Yeah. So everyone's tried to distance themselves from J.K. Rowling, but now J.K. Rowling finds herself in a position where she's to distance herself from a fucking dictator. And it's like the rats fleeing from light. They're all trying to escape each other's disgusting, toxic worldviews, and I find that very funny.
Well, her response to him neatly avoided the thing that he was actually tying them together on, which was being transphobic. So he said in his tweet, because I actually read all these because I hate myself, that basically Russians like stood strong with transphobia. Essentially, like he said it in cultural coded language, but he basically said, Russia is being canceled for this, upholding rational positions on gender, just like J.K. Rowling.
But I thought it was more of just how the rest of the world is responding to this invasion of like trying to, sanction them and silence them and distance themselves and say they're bad, they're not good people. Not
well, really, I mean, I can get the tweet, but he references specifically the trans thing with her, which I thought was odd because is he trying to just embarrass her while also covering for himself? Because it's like she couldn't respond to that, obviously, right? Because she is transphobic. So like all she could do is like, well, you're a dictator. It's like, okay, but you still agree with him, and you can't like on that issue, and you can't really deny that.
To me, it kind of robs the. I think it means more if this is in the context of the invasion, because I like him, concentrating this down to like Russia's getting canceled, as opposed to doing an active invasion, and the rest of the military world will respond in some way. He's like, no, you're canceling us. Like that he's likening him invading Ukraine to like having your like getting your mentions blasted and getting downvoted. Like it's just such a fucked up comparison. But I don't know. I like the language of hits back at as opposed to just tweeted a response because she doesn't want to be associated with a dictator.
Right.
I just like that Putin thinks he's like having fun engaging in the culture war instead of the actual real war. I like how toxic J.K. Rowling's become, that it's now like it's like she's elevated from just a bitch rich author to like a actual person of political importance. Like and the stakes are really high of the left right divide here. I don't know. There's a lot going on here. I like it. I think it's funny. I think it's funny she's getting owned.
Yeah, it is interesting when you have to go online to clarify you're better than Vladimir Putin.
But
Like, it shouldn't be hard to do.
you know, this is also a fascinating microcosm of what we think of as the left-right divide in America. Rowling considers herself like a lib.
Yeah.
She considers herself left-wing. So what does it tell you when basically the most right-wing fascist authoritarian you can get in the world agrees on some fundamental worldview issues with a, British lib? It tells you that our left-right divide isn't actually representative of what the real left is, the real right is.
I mean, that's what enrages liberals, right? Is being reminded they're not the left.
Right, being reminded they are in fact right-wing.
So when when someone who has mostly right-wing views and a few kind of pet issues that are not right-wing thinks of themselves as better than all those chuds, it's like, well, okay, but that only lasts so long as the bubble isn't popped by someone who has broadly good views across the board. And someone like Rowling, who I think genuinely does have fairly good politics in several other regards, has terrible politics on gender and has doubled down on that so many times that she's clearly not changing her mind on it.
Well, see,
And now it's like, even this old communist who's now like a right-wing dictator is on board with my crazy, turf shit. That is an embarrassment to me, but I'm still not going to change my mind. Like she's not willing to acknowledge that, as you say, her position is more in line with like the Russian Orthodox Church than it is with modernity.
yeah, she can't be the one who's wrong here.
Yeah.
But it's also another issue, which is like she's on the right on a cultural issue, which is rare for libs.
Right,
So
it's usually
other
the
libs,
opposite. Yeah.
other libs feel good, praising that she's like a billionaire, but mad that she's a turf. Like they feel good about themselves because they're to the left of her on gender.
Well, it's a really fucked up one, right? Because she thinks of herself primarily as a feminist,
Right.
and she felt because she's a turf, she feels that trans people are trying to steal feminism from true women.
Right.
So she's in a baffling niche. She's like kind of carved for herself.
For people's reference, because we keep saying it a lot, TERF stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, meaning, as Alex just said, they feel that male to female trans people are essentially the patriarchy invading on women's spaces.
Right.
So
it's an older version of feminism, which didn't really encompass LGBT issues to the same degree, and which kind of frames, kind of irrationally and paranoid way, the issue as men like dressing as women or pretending to be women to somehow steal valor
and that
as women.
And that female to male trans people are trying to become more masculine to like engage in the patriarchy and benefit from it.
And are like betraying their female identity.
Yeah.
But the reality is, now that we understand as an entire society, more or less, that that's not what's going on with trans people, to continue to hew to that position is just like incredible stubbornness and willful ignorance. It's not like this hasn't been explored to death in both the academy and sciences and popular culture by now. Like this isn't 1980. So at this point, if you're still holding on to the turf position, you're like a relic. And I don't really understand why she would do that when she has so many other positions that she's actually pretty good on. But that's a whole other,
because people are, engaged in cognitive dissonance all the time and hold mutually exclusive views all the time in their head.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
And there's a, I'm not at all. I think I'm not at all trying to be apologist for her, but also there's just like when you're that kind of revered your whole life, or just a normal person too, and you're opened up to the overwhelming hyperbolic criticism of the internet, people just always tend to kind of hunker down, even if their opinion, even if they realize that their opinion has flaws.
Yeah, when people make public displays of their worldview, they lock in more, as opposed to say, I'm open to changing my mind. And she says she's had personal experiences, formative sexual harassment or sexual assault experiences which basically solidified her feminism. She's kind of period locked, as you say, Alex, in like second wave. So, there's all sorts of issues going on as to why anyone holds their individual views.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is her economic stuff was forged first because she was impoverished earlier on in her life and only survived because of the British social welfare system. So
and then became a billionaire.
She's kind of locked in from early formative experiences on the value of social democracy, which is something that's almost never locked in over cultural liberalism for modern liberals.
Right.
Whereas for her, it's like that part was locked in because she had personal firsthand experience with poverty for herself, even though she's now a billionaire. So she's probably one of the only billionaires who really understands what that involves. Whereas on social issues, she's, as you say, locked into a different generation of what feminism meant and doesn't seem to be able to come around in it, which I think is genuinely tragic because she does not seem to be malicious so much as like stuck on this from like a mental holdup, because she is trying hard to be good, quote unquote, on so many other things genuinely that I think she's really just like struggling here. But I don't want to make an apology for someone who is harming trans people too much. Like, yeah, she's harming them. Like, she's spreading bad ideas. She's on board with Putin's take on this, even if she hates him.
England is just as much on board as America is with legally fucking over trans people in their country. They've got some really disgusting policies for trans.
Yeah, and it really doesn't help when someone who's seen as like a liberal icon is also shitting on that. Yeah. If Martin Luther King was like doing all these things, he's like, also fuck Mexicans. It's like, well, hold on. Like, that would really fuck you up because you're like, but in every other regard, you think you're on your side, and it would feel like a really serious betrayal.
That there will be fewer and fewer bad hombres.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it actually hurts more when it's someone like her as opposed to someone who's just been like a fucking psycho the whole time. A lot of kids looked up to her, and she had relatively good politics otherwise. So,
except they never should have, because her books are trash and stolen garbage. That's my hot take of the day. All right, let's move to TMZ. Speaking about gender politics, dog abandoned at animal shelter because owners thought he's gay.
So he's not gay?
Wait, the dog is gay?
They think this dog is gay.
Fucking gay dog. What is...
I mean, I would love it. I think, isn't that better? Like, no one wants their dog to like run out fuck and then have like a bunch of kids that you have to deal with. That seems better than me.
You don't even have to have it neutered.
Yeah, I pay extra for a gay dog.
So apparently they found it humping another male dog.
Every dog does that.
Which isn't merely sexuality. It's like exerting control and dominance. It's almost like the same way humans do that. And they're like, man, this dog is gay. You gotta get it out of here. They abandoned it.
These are the most homophobic people to exist, or they have never heard of dogs before.
Right,
like every dog does this. Female dogs will do that.
Yeah. It's like I would think of like the most commercialized activity. Like you see it in every movie, every TV show. You see it in real life whenever you go to a dog park.
They hump humans. I mean, come on.
Yeah, do they think that like
this dog's engaging in bestiality? Let's get rid of him.
Yeah. They basically just hump when they're excited. It doesn't even have to be sexual or gendered in any way. Do dogs have enough brain cells to decide what a gender identity is? What the fuck are they talking about?
No, but dogs can be gay.
Yeah,
same way that a pretty similar.
No, sure, but the dog isn't sitting there going like, "Hello, sailor." Like the dog doesn't have a fucking like gender orientation or preference in that way that it can conceptualize.
It doesn't have an identity, but it may have an orientation, a preference.
It's not going to Pride. It's not an identity. Ridiculous.
I'm not gonna butt fuck your son,
right?
Because I'm trying to think like what their concern was, like because if it's like a religious thing, dogs aren't gonna have it anyways for most religious people. So,
or they automatically go to heaven.
Well, I mean that's the based perspective, I suppose.
Right. All dogs go to heaven. It's a fucking movie.
I've read it. I've seen it. Yeah. What? Wow. I mean, just how homophobic do you have to be for this? That's
very.
I mean, it's also I like the qualifier like thought he's gay, as in like
no, they tested it. He is straight as hell.
Established he's gay. Yeah.
They put him in an arena with a female and a male dog, and 9 out of 10 times he went for the female.
9 out of 10 dentists established the dog is straight.
I was saying they have him paw the left or right button of like which dog you prefer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they have him do a rigorous double blind test. But yeah, it just like I don't understand what this would be implying, right? So let's say you're a conservative crank who hates gay people because it's like you're falling into moral sin and degeneracy. Well, that implies agency. That implies you're making a choice. If they're acknowledging that gayness is intrinsic and doesn't require higher reason.
Whoa. Who's acknowledging that? Only we're acknowledging that.
No, the owners, because they're implying that a dog which lacks higher thought can be gay in a way that is sinful or undesirable, which would imply that the supposed sin of homosexuality has nothing to do with higher agency or intellect, but could be basically in-baked even in an animal, which actually contradicts their position of it being a moral decision.
Stop. You're making a lot of assumptions. You're making assumptions that this is based on religious world view. It might not necessarily. You're making assumptions about what they think about dogs. They may think dogs are very smart.
You think it's just like some asshole who's personally repulsed by homosexuality and has no religious dog in the fight?
Don't like gay stuff. They just think all gay shit's bad. They don't necessarily have religious justification, and they also might not know fuck all about how dogs' brains work. They could just be an asshole who's like, "Oh, that makes me uncomfortable." Get rid of this dog.
It's possible, but I do think that the strongest, homophobic currents within American society are the religious bloc. I just don't.
Yeah, but as we've talked about many times now, a lot of that shit flows downstream, and even secular right wingers believe a lot of this shit for no good reason.
But to the extent that there is an argument logically about what makes someone gay, generally speaking, it is seen as a choice by the people who hate it, which is why they get angry at you for doing it. Whereas if it's a dog, they can't make choices, so it just seems to contradict some of the reasoning here.
The choice stuff has actually kind of fallen out of favor with the anti-gay apologists. They even now tend to acknowledge the science, and they basically say engaging in the behavior is the choice. You can't control your nature. You're supposed to just be fucking celibate now. So apparently this dog didn't choose to be a fucking priest.
The dog is supposed to be celibate?
But I'm not saying in this case, I'm just saying the actual apologetics around this have moved away from being gay as a choice, because that's obvious horseshit.
Interesting.
All right, let's move. And
hang on, I feel like Aiden was going to say
that. I'm sitting here with my eyes kind of narrowed.
At a loss.
Doing the fry face from
yeah.
Futurama. But yeah, because it's just for sexuality to play such an important role in whether or not you keep a cute dog, by the way, I'll say. Very, very nice looking dog.
Should we adopt this dog? What do we say?
It seems like sexual activity was always part of the plan for their ownership of this dog. They're going to encourage a breeding. I don't know. It's very weird for that to.
Yeah, they wanted to raise a straight dog family.
I'm just thinking because the dogs that I've owned, sure they've hunted other dogs, et cetera, but they've never had intercourse with other dogs except maybe when they ran away without me knowing. That's not a normal part of owning a dog, is planning on them having sex with other dogs.
Maybe they're breeders, and their goal is not to just get love and affection out of the dog. It's use
that's reasonable. That's reasonable. This is just a clickbait.
Maybe they're breeders and homophobic.
No, because if they're breeders, they would understand that this is a gibberish thing to say.
Right. Okay, they're ignorant, homophobic, new breeders.
I actually agree with you that on the one hand, the breeder thing seems to solve, circle the square, right? It's kind of you've managed to explain this in a way that is logical. But any breeder who knows anything would understand that dogs don't have gender identities in that way.
All right, so this
TMZ
is slandering them by accusing these breeders of being homophobic when they're just breeders. I don't know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
I guess hide your kids, hide your dog.
Let's keep this sexual energy going.
Oh God.
By going to Vice. Lube and condom company designed insurance because it sells lube and condoms.
So it's just a tautology?
Here's the subtitle. Paradise Marketing, which has sold condoms, lube, and other pleasure products since 1978, had its workers' compensation policy canceled out of nowhere. Discuss.
Well, isn't workers' compensation for their workers, not for the company itself? Associated with the company, but it sounds to me kind of like they're fucking over their labor pool and blaming it on being a sex company. Could be wrong. Obviously, it could be another company just suddenly getting prudish, but something tells me that if it flew in 1978, it could have flown in 2022.
Well, no, they're losing their insurance for covering workers' compensation. So if their workers get injured or something and that's the insurance. It's not like insurance for the place burning down.
Yeah, no. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying. This is a benefit for workers, which is they are covered in case something goes wrong in the workplace, and you have to pay for that benefit, right? Like the company has to pay, and the workers, I think, have to chip in uh, for paying. So part of me feels like the company's just like, we don't want to pay this anymore. We'll say it's because they hate lube.
No, it's a quote sent from a letter sent to Paradise Marketing from the Hartford, the insurance company, which comes from Hartford, Connecticut, the center of insurance.
Yeah.
Quote, the reason for non-renewal is we have learned that your operations include distribution of adult products. It's in the letter.
Isn't the name of the company like Lube and Friends? Like, I don't.
No, it's called Paradise Marketing.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, my bad. I would assume that was a strip joint, not a condom and lube company.
Yeah, I would have assumed Paradise Marketing is like a
I'm just saying it took more than 4 decades for the insurance that they had to realize what they were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is. I mean, yeah, this is obviously stupid that a company would do this, especially over something like lube and condoms, which are like far from the most titillating of
Yeah, not exactly controversial sex toys.
Yeah,
or just like medical equipment.
Well, I could see if it was like, okay, we're not going to insure bad dragon because orifices aren't meant to do that, right? Like I would kind of get that because there's actually like a medical
public
health hazard involved, right?
But we don't insure oversized dildos,
right? We're not going to sell you a dildo the size of a fucking elephant and just assume that someone's going to survive that. But at the same time, there's nothing about the description here that suggests any danger. If anything, lube and condoms make it safer. I think both of those things are meant to make it easier and safer.
See,
so if anything, it's like making it less likely there's risk.
And here's where the religious sexual oppression from the previous article actually flows down. Yeah, it's because whoever runs this insurance company is a fucking repressed crazy asshole who's like, this is a sinful, immoral. We won't insure this. We won't protect your workers.
I mean, I think it's 50-50 at least that since they were with this company so long, they had some like grandfathered fantastic deal with them, and the company's like Hartford was like, no, we don't want to give you this deal anymore. So we're gonna use this weird sexual.
So we're gonna put ourselves on blast for the whole internet.
It should be mentioned. This is about workers' compensation. It has nothing to do with what the products are that they're shipping and handling or producing. Like the employees aren't using the products. They're not fucking like bending over and fucking each other with dildos and wearing condoms and lube. Like they're workers. They're not the users. That's not what you do at a job unless you're a porn actress.
What you're saying here is exactly what the founder of the company, Dennis Paradise, had to say in a statement. Quote, this guy's amazing. I hope he wears like a Hawaiian shirt every day. Quote, this is a work. This is about if a box falls and hits an employee. They're not using the items in the warehouse during working hours. I do not see how the nature of the items put in the workers, the items puts the workers in the warehouse at an increased risk. This is clearly about a century
or earlier than that. I mean, for fuck's sake, like this is incredibly nonsensical. Not only because of the sexual politics being bizarre, but because it's framing it as a sexual issue when it has nothing to do with sexuality.
Right, it's a workers' issue.
It's a workers' issue, and it's just saying we don't want to cover your guys with insurance for whatever insane reason.
And even larger, just like a corporate battle issue, like corporations vying for control over each other.
It's just like they are fully aware. Like this is an insurance company. It's not like some crank that people are not doing the sex when they're creating the products or shipping the products. That's just not. It's not related.
It reminds me of the story we did about OnlyFans being threatened by the credit card company, or like them claiming, and that's why they were gonna have to move away from like selling sex stuff. But then it turned out like. Didn't it turn out that like that wasn't the actual thing was going on? Like the credit card was like, no, it's fine. I don't know. The point is, there's all sorts of corporate overreach where companies that have to employ each other for various things start trying to fuck each other over and then pull control away from each other. And this seems to be an example of where the insurance company thought they could get away with fucking over this company or changing their rates. And it's clearly either discrimination or just bad business practice.
Never try to fuck over someone who specializes in condoms and lube.
They'll be the ones getting the last laugh.
They'll be doing it safely, at the very least.
I'm just saying the leader of this insurance company might find himself waking up one day inside a 55-gallon drum of
of lube, and
The fucking
and
Godfather scene.
there's a horse dildo in his bed.
Yeah.
His
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You on the day of my daughter's wedding, bring me a condom.
All right.
You came on me on this, the day of my daughter's wedding.
I'm gonna, you know what? Fuck, I'm gonna keep this sex energy up with our next article. Kind of.
We're gonna lose our workers' comp.
The Daily Beast. Madison Cawthorn casually claims he's been invited to orgies. You ever get invited to sex parties?
Should someone who's been repeatedly accused of molesting his college, acquaintances and associates be mentioning this?
And like going to Hitler's like vacation house?
There were like 70 women who banded together to say that he groped them, assaulted them in college while still being in a wheelchair.
And also
impressive amounts of aggression.
Also losing the function of his legs because he was drunk driving. I mean, this dude's like out.
Yeah.
He's one of the wildest cranks. He's younger than any of us.
It just seems like he's handing testimony to the prosecution.
He loves it.
Really weird.
He does it like every week. He goes to something and makes a fool of himself. So what do you think about like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell going to coke orgies?
I mean, they'll do coke, I'm sure. I don't know. I'm just teetering between like trying to be progressive and questioning whether a man whose legs don't function gets invited to many orgies. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And also who has one of the most repugnant vacant personalities I've ever seen on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, he truly is a shell of a person.
I guess point 3. Who cares? Like, orgies aren't illegal morally.
It's not illegal when rich people do it.
Yeah, I mean that's the real ethical problem, is that these are the GOP evangelists who want to see every person below the poverty line who turns to drugs thrown in prison for the rest of their life, if not before the firing squad.
Yeah, is he trying to throw other GOP guys under the bus? Because they're the ones who would have invited him.
You would have thought he'd say like the squad invited me.
Yeah.
But no, he's an idiot. He says people he's looked up to who are now in their 60s and 70s have invited him to orgies at their homes and done coke in front of them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is this like a vengeance article? Like they didn't cover for him in some lawsuit or situation, so now he's trying to take him down?
Yeah, he's probably going full Trump. He's like falling out of favor of the Republican Party because they realize he's not actually that electable again.
Yeah, so it almost feels like this is a fuck you, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me thing. Because there's no way that this hits anyone other than Republicans, because who the fuck would invite Madison Cawthorn other than Republicans?
But he also gave no evidence, no names, and didn't deny that he ever participated in any of these things. He just said they've happened. So he's a weird thin ice. I don't know. It's interesting.
Also, the way this is written, the two pieces aren't connected. So he could have been invited to an orgy at one place and then seen coke at another place.
Yeah.
And they don't even have to be related. So saying, okay, I saw a politician do coke at one point, it's like, oh, wow.
No, but
what a fucking revelation.
The whole thing is he's yawning as like a young Christian conservative who's going to like bring back family values. And he's like, it's, I think, you know what I think? This is him twisting, like, it's the deep state somehow. Like, so, politics is dirtier than you could have ever imagined. With only being here 2 years, I've already seen the moral decay and filth here. It's like, yes, there is, in fact, moral decay and filth there, but it's not what you think it is.
Wasn't he married to, like, an OnlyFans thought? Like, wasn't that the whole point?
Who cares, as Aiden said? Who gives a shit?
I just said thought.
Yeah, you sure did.
Be gone! All right, let's...
Yeah.
Where am I going now?
I can only imagine.
All right, we're going to get serious.
Okay, I'm going to need a few moments for that.
I'm going to stop on by the Newsweek. Man who built dream cabin by hand sued for illegal squatting in woods.
So he built his dream cabin on land he didn't own? Is that what they're implying?
That seems to be the suggestion from the way I read it.
Mm-hmm.
How did he finish the cabin in time without anyone noticing? Like, that's not a one-day project.
No, he has a YouTube channel. He broadcast his ostensible crime. I guess he didn't think it was a crime.
Is he like a sovereign citizen?
I don't know. It says this happened in Canada, but I don't know if he's Canadian.
Well, as we all know, Canada does not have enough available land for people to settle on, so you need to prosecute them. They only have one of like the lowest population densities of any country. I mean, I don't know. Like, you're gonna sue him? Like, this guy has money. This guy's like a hobo.
No, you don't sue people just for their money. You sue to force them basically so that they can't fight back, so they have to leave. They have to get off your property.
I would have thought just said, forcibly evicted by Mounties. But this is weird.
Do you I don't know. Like, there's two ways this. Of course, there's many ways it can go, but there's two ways I can see it going. One, he's like either like an Ann Prim or like a weird libertarian guy who's like trying to make a statement about like doomsday prepper type, or this is like some grand attempt to raise awareness for how he's built a cabin on First Nation land.
Oh God, that's actually what it is. He built it on native land. Oh,
God damn it!
God damn it, dude.
Fuck.
Well, why would they say squatting in the woods instead of the very obvious context of building on First Nations territory?
I'm pretty sure that's what Newsweek's perspective is. I'm pretty sure that's the bias they've put into the headline.
That's a pretty remarkable thing not to mention.
Yeah, that's not quoted. The only thing that's quoted is the Dream Cabin.
Is Dream Cabin meant to be like a reference to like Dreamcatcher? Are we supposed to like?
No, it's probably like go look
sideways.
Give us more clicks by having your page directly linked to the YouTube video. Like,
look how fucking elaborate this thing is.
Damn, you build that? That shit looks nice.
You may be an asshole, but like we can build my cabin.
Yeah. Man. So I don't know how much you've read, Jace, but was that the point, or did he just happen to build it on?
I have no idea.
First Nation
He's probably just an idiot. You realize like you need permission. I doubt he's Canadian. Like, I kind of suspect he's just an American who probably crossed the border, bought a bunch of lumber, built it on land he didn't even know existed for like native people that the like local government of Yukon kind of make sure is kept okay and sacred.
I don't know. There's a lot of Canadian shots.
I don't know. Who knows? But my point is, it seemed interesting because it appears at first blush like this guy's getting fucked on a squatters' rights case. Turns out it's totally the opposite, and the Canadian police are being very reasonable with like, please just take your shit and leave and put it back in good condition. He's like, no.
Now, I don't want to downplay the severity of someone who's being a dickhead and squatting on native lands, but isn't everyone squatting on native lands? Like, the entire country is built on stolen native
because
lands.
the native lands are lands that we currently decree by law and the coercion of the government.
I mean, you're
still native.
You're saying no, but like the entire area was stolen by brutal violence and force over the last 400 years.
Like we live in a society, yes, but we have determined with modern borders and rules and the authority of the state what remains national park, what remains under the control of small groups of national tribes left, and what is under the fiat of Western Canadian American land. Like,
right, but we who has determined that are the victors of that theft. So
yes, and those victors
kind of
are
silly.
saying, leave this land alone, leave that for them.
It seems kind of silly for the Canadian government, whose entire thing was successfully stealing from the natives, to say this guy can't steal from the natives.
On this land that we're not using for anything else.
They stole it slightly nicer than we did. Slightly.
Yeah. I'd say if no one was hurt in the process, let them keep the cabin. That's my official decree.
I want the chieftain to move into the cabin.
Yeah, what if he just has to sublet it to natives only?
Yeah, it's an Airbnb.
Yeah, he can run and operate it, but only for the benefit of First peoples. I don't know.
Yeah, create a commune.
Well, I'm sure a mutually beneficial compromise solution like that will not happen.
Yep.
So let's keep moving.
I went to his YouTube channel because I thought like, oh, maybe he's big. Like maybe this is blown up. If there's a whole article about it. No, they have like 10,000 views each, which unlucky, I guess. Wild that he could build that without anyone noticing, though.
All right, well, sticking with the great Pacific Northwest.
Where are we going? Portland, Seattle, Vancouver.
From Yahoo News, I guess a little more north. Lawmakers reject Russian officials' request to return Alaska. Quote, never, ever, ever. Nuh-uh. Not happening.
We'll take backsies.
Was this the moment that Russia thought we were in good graces?
And this was the moment Putin realized Russia was canceled.
Hey, I know you just shut down our entire economy and have turned like an entire global alliance against us for fairly good reason. Could we have a huge chunk of territory back?
Well, I don't think Putin said this. Just some Russian parliament dude was like, and for the and while we're on it, give us Alaska back.
It just seems a little far fetched.
And while we're in an irredentist mind state, let's get Alaska back. Because it's about what we were just talking about. Like borders are kind of all by fiat anyway. It's all just who has the coercive ability at the time.
Well, I guess finally certain people could see Russia from their house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, was this proposed as like a tete? Like, all right, our economy is crashing because of the unprecedented level of economic sanctions, removal from the SWIFT banking system, etc. The least you could do is give us Alaska back.
Oh, I have an idea. What
I
if
don't like that.
Putin was like, all right, I'll stop invading Ukraine as long as we get Alaska. And then that'll really test the mettle of all the Americans who are like, we stand with Ukraine. Because, the like Alaskan oil that we get and all the benefits we get of having Alaska, like, and having all those people having to move. That'd be an interesting test.
Proposed trade deal. You get Alaska, we get the Donbass.
Yeah, it's a geographical draft. You get Ukraine back.
Ukraine becomes a U.S. territory.
Oh,
Or I don't know. Ukraine gets to be in the EU or something, and then like we get Alaska back.
But then what does America get?
Feeling good that we ended the Ukraine crisis.
That's not how
I'm
US
not thinking
does
it's gonna
business.
work. I'm just saying it would be funny.
But to me, it's almost the opposite. It's like Alaska kind of sucks. It's filled with like psychos. So maybe this is like the Chappelle racial draft where like they're trying to get rid of it. So it's like fine, you can have Condoleezza Rice as long as you also take Colin Powell, kind of thing. Like it's it's like they're trying to push it off onto Russia.
That's what I was alluding to. Except obviously the people in Alaska are never going to say that because they're the psychos in charge of it. And we get ridiculous amounts of resources and oil from Alaska.
I mean, the whole state is just a petroleum operation. Like that is what it's for.
It really sucks because it's such a beautiful state, but yeah, it just functions.
It's a dangerous state.
It's a dangerous state of mind.
It's like the cold equivalent of Australia. Like unless you will get killed by monsters that live there.
Unless you're like filming The Grey or like the vampire film.
30 Days a Night, yeah.
You're basically there to get oil. Like those are the only things that happen up there. And or you're there to be like a political graft guy.
And everything costs insane amounts of money because of all the shipping. So sandwiches are like $30. It's like European prices. It's amazing. But everyone makes insane bank.
I would like if Putin tried to do his like faux culture war shit, and he was like, Russia is requesting that Alaska is returned to the Inuit. Like some sort of insane request that like helps none of the major powers.
But here's how dead our politics is. So Lisa Murkowski, the like pseudo Republican who is from, where's she from? Is she from Maine or Alaska?
Yeah, she's from
Alaska. So instead of tweeting like we will stand hard, steadfast against Russia, she tweets a Taylor Swift gif like nuh-uh, never ever ever. Like this is the level in which our politicians engage with each other.
It's the same person who couldn't make it back. Like it was refused by all airlines for not obeying basic masking mandates, I think.
Oh, she was one who they wouldn't let on the plane to go back to DC?
Yeah.
I don't remember that being her. I could have sworn that was like a local rep.
Rep, maybe?
Yeah, because I didn't recall her name when we covered that one, so I just don't think it was their main senator. But
it's funny because, as you say, like her name, like she's like politicians are just becoming social media stars. They leverage their audiences. Their audiences are political voting blocks. And they leverage it the same way a fucking influencer would to like get some drip or like rent the Lambo for a day. Like they leverage, tweet out memes. They engage in the same behavior. It's psychotic to watch the way our politics has devolved into social media banter in the last 10 years.
Well, even this whole thing's performative because it goes without saying that we're not returning
for the Russian guy.
Like it goes way without saying that we're not returning Alaska. You don't need to say it like you're a little toddler having a hissy fit, being like, "Never, ever." It's like, yeah, like. Obviously, why would you even need to respond to this?
The obvious tasteful tweet would have been a gif of Dr. Evil saying, "How about no?"
Right, it actually suggests insecurity. Like they actually think there was a chance that this could have happened. It's just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, just like Dr. Evil shushing Scott. Like that would be a much better response.
I go with this one probably. Idris Elba from The Wire.
Yeah.
All right. Newsweek is continuing to befuddle me.
There's something real fucked up at Newsweek.
You gonna spill the tea?
From Newsweek, China praises Ukraine resistance, pledges economic support.
No shit.
Huh? Wasn't China literally in the news for like sending out the memos of how to say the Russian propaganda better and how like to say the anti-American propaganda better? Whose side are they, like a double agent? What's going on with China?
Well, yes, unambiguously. Like they're the most neutral of countries on this because they're so wedded to Russia economically and politically
and American debt and their issues in their region.
Yeah, they're trying to be everyone's friend still, and that obviously doesn't work when everyone's forcing you to pick a side. So one day they'll release like, "Don't worry, Putin, we're never going to sanction you," and it's not good that the other people are sanctioning you. And then the next day they'll be like, "Ukrainia forever." It's like
Ukrainia.
Yeah, because there's like the different way they spell it, but
eukaryotes.
Yeah, they have a schizophrenic position on this because they have to try to make everyone happy because they don't want to have to pick a side.
Interesting.
Like everyone else is happy to pick a side.
I think this kind of fucks up the neutrality though by saying they're pledging economic support to Ukraine. Wouldn't that piss off Russia, who gives them a lot of resources?
Right, but the previous day they're like the only country that's still trading with Russia openly and says you shouldn't be sanctioning them. So they're talking about sides of their mouth.
So they'll say like we'll just drip some resources to Ukraine just to make everything look fair and balanced. All right, what were you saying, Nate?
I was just saying that yeah, I mean, from the headline, I wonder if it's hyperbolic because like praising Ukrainian resistance does feel like more, I guess, charged rhetoric than I would expect from them. It'd be like, we really respect the sovereignty of all independent democratic countries in the world. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
blah,
that's
blah.
actually what it was. Turns out, China's ambassador to Ukraine. So the ambassador to Ukraine, not like the head of the CCP, praised the strength of the Ukrainian people and promised to respect the choices of its sovereign government in a subtle move to balance its pro-Russian complexion. Subtle. The one thing that China screams out, it's subtle.
Well, I mean, they've basically like telegraphed for years that they're trying to be like a third way, unaligned bloc, that they don't want to have the major superpowers dictating for China what's going to happen, that they want to play their own game and be,
they're going to slowly slip into top place. While Russia and America are fighting for first and second place, they're going to draft us and zip by us at the very end of the finish line to become the actual superpower while we kill each other.
Even though I don't think they have ambitions to become like the international power player like Britain or US or Soviet Union type country has been in the last several hundred years, I think their intention is to be able to hold their own and compete with those people or in those countries, like without feeling ashamed or feeling like they're someone's puppet. So even though, for instance, the Soviet Union and China were both communist, they bickered constantly and did not get along very well at all, even though it was totally in their interest to do so. So China, even under its communist, quote unquote communist regime, has not consistently chosen a side, even when there was very obvious reasons to choose a side between the sort of Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc as it developed during the Cold War and beyond. So this is, to me, consistent with everything they've done the whole time, which is to just bicker and not pick a side permanently and constantly keep their options open.
I mean, there's a reason that
they're in an open geopolitical relationship with the rest of the world.
The reason the state exists for 3+ millennia. And I don't even say that glibly. Like Russia, historically and thus embedded in their culture, has learned from thousands of years of being victimized time and time again and reforming as their own sovereign nation. They're a very survivalist country. Make perfect sense. But also, this is a complete falsehood because as Alexis has clearly said, like they immediately swept in to replace U.S. payment companies and etc. So they're just playing the game, playing the classic Kissinger realpolitik that we all know and love.
Right. So the actual financial thing, they're backing Russia, but the way it looks, it's like, oh no, we're supporting U.S. and Ukraine. Oh, so we're good guys. I see what they're doing.
It was really funny listening to them give this really elaborate speech that was like, Ukraine clearly has no direct historical tie to Russia, but Taiwan is China. And like they didn't see any irony in saying that.
They didn't blink.
Well, see, that's the funny thing is because as you were mentioning during the Cold War, America basically engaged in proxy wars in both Eastern Europe and Asia.
Yeah, of course.
So we, in an attempt to stop communism, tried to deal with Russian proxy states and Chinese proxy states, most notably Laos, Vietnam, Korea, all these places that now China has to support. And so maybe China sees an opportunity here, like, all right, we're busy fucking with Russia. Maybe they can slip in their juju and trying to get their hegemonic control over their region.
But that's what I'm saying. They didn't they were almost trying to unlink those things, even though I think they ought to be logically linked.
Right, of course.
They're trying to imply like, well, we may or may not do anything to Taiwan, but it has nothing to do with Ukraine.
Right. They're either both linked or they're neither linked. Like,
and it's like, again, like I understand that there's differences there. I understand that Taiwan is almost entirely ethnically Chinese, whereas Ukraine has its own ethnic identity.
It's like half-half.
But Ukraine still has plenty of Russians in it, and Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union only 30 years ago, whereas Taiwan hadn't been part of, the Chinese official mainland government for 75 years. So, like, there's ways of making arguments that Russia has just as strong a case, depending on how you look at it. It just seems silly to pretend like that. Don't mind that.
Ukraine had a legitimate democratic revolution against Russia, and
well, yeah, it
Taiwan
wasn't just a fascist coup. Yeah, I understand, but still,
it's I mean, like, I don't. I don't think either have any argument at all, but it's just such a weird. It's always been something that really, like, does confuse me a little bit. How China just, like, on the Taiwan issue refuses to acknowledge, like, any basic logic or their own kind of just, like, straight imperialist revanchist interest. It's just, like, a very kind of weird game to play for a country that, like there's nothing to really lose in my mind. Like, everyone knows. It's just like a weird performative thing.
I think they're just trying to emulate us, which is when we do a thing, it's right. When other people do a thing, it's wrong. They like engaging in that, like, we're special, we're number one, we're the best. We can do what other people can't. We don't have to follow the rules because we're the best.
Do the same thing, with the current democracy freedom shtick, but it's just so silly when you have this plethora of history and policy to draw from.
What is it you're saying they're doing that you don't understand?
Just like trying to, like being so petty as to, like, never ever allow anyone to say that Taiwan is currently a sovereign country. Like, that kind of petty level of
they don't want to give an inch on any.
Yeah, like because, like, them, like, barring anyone who says that from dealing in their country, whether
making a big stink of it on the international stage.
Yeah, it's just like I get optics still has a role, but in terms of real power, it doesn't change anything. It's just very. It's a kind of like it feels to me like, like a kind of catty, like, high school move almost.
Yeah, it's their hyper masculinity that they're trying to channel, which is that we have to be alpha all the time, constantly. We can't ever look like we're weak. We can't ever look like we're giving in. We can't look like we're ever compromised. We have to look like we're in total control, because that's the MO of hegemonic powers.
I mean, it makes them look super weak, though.
Behavior.
Yeah, that's basically where my confusion stems from. Is
yes, to us it seems lame that they're puffing out their chest, but that's like the fascist MO. They love that shit. They eat it up. It's their red meat.
It's just so sad that, like, all the major hegemonic imperial powers feel so insecure.
Yes, we always have to saber rattle and whip our dicks out, even when it's, like, not called for at all, because we're bad at politics as a world. Speaking of being bad at politics, let's move to the Atlantic. From the Atlantic, quote, "Why can't the West admit that Ukraine is winning?"
When was this published? Because, like, so much changes day to day. I just wanted to make sure what we're talking about.
Only a week ago. And as far as I know, it does feel that way. And, like, Putin and the Russian forces are not happy with the progress they've made.
So 3/21/2022?
Yeah, on the 21st, yeah.
Yeah, just because who knows when this comes out.
So I couldn't understand this. Like, what does the Atlantic author think their point is?
Yeah, I mean, to just, like, talk about very briefly the reality of things. Yes, this has been a disaster for Russia, but Russia's still definitely winning. I mean, you can just see in, like, the last few days landscape.
They have taken land. They've killed lots of people. They've
putting a rhetoric that he's willing to do, like, a neutrality agreement with Russia. But yeah, in terms of putting that aside for the moment and thinking about what the author was thinking, I don't know. what they're trying to say with this. Like,
Here's his subtitle. America has become too accustomed to thinking of its side as stymied, ineffective, or incompetent. So it's like saying you're projecting and you're like insecure about all our previous engagements that have failed by being like, oh no, they're crushing us. Like, oh, we have trauma from Vietnam and Afghanistan.
Well, I
and
was going to
Iraq.
say that just sounds like racist to me because it's like, believe me, this isn't like those Vietnamese, Koreans, or Arabs who couldn't be trusted to defend their own country and democracy because they're disinterested. Because I mean, all the other wars we've been in recently have been Cold War proxy wars with non-white people.
Right.
Whereas this is the first time that we're like, oh, let's back this European white nation directly.
Yeah, but see, Ukraine's in an interesting position because it doesn't really feel European. It feels much more Eastern than that.
And yeah, it's Eastern European.
Like, what I'm saying is, it's not like defending the Brits, who have way more culturally and historically in common with us. So, like, this is to me where, like, the race stuff goes over my head, because, like, okay, yeah, their skin is light, like a lot of us, but, like, that doesn't mean they have a lot of stuff in common with us.
But whiteness is a fictional premise in the first place. Well, it's just a question. It's just a question of how you can leverage it, right? So, like, we're named after the Caucasus, which is further to the east than they are,
right?
And, like, it's just we're talking.
I think that's a stupid name, but
yeah, but it's they are associated with Europe. They're associated with territory that NATO, if not directly controlled, at least was interested in defending from, Russian aggression. And it's seen as a conflict in Europe because it is in Europe. The fact that it's not in Western Europe is that's noteworthy, but it's not. I don't think it changes that it's Europe. Europe is a much bigger place than we imagine. But yeah, like, I just think that in this case, they're saying, let's get really bullish and really hawkish on Ukraine, and they're just going to go right back to the fucking let's start a war with Russia ourselves pale that they've been beating their chest on in certain quarters for weeks now, which is, oh, if Ukraine can actually win this thing, then we should be sending them infinite arms and infinite resources and never compromising an inch, even though that doesn't make any sense to do because that's not the way to solve it anyway. So, like, again, whether or not Russia is winning, and I think winning is a difficult thing to define when you have such an asymmetric conflict. Like, if Ukraine kills 2 Russians for every one they lose, they still lose. So what does winning mean? Like, how much do you have to be winning to be winning? Ukraine would have to have, like, incredibly, asymmetric success to really win in a long-term conflict with Russia. But this kind of article is just like saying, a lot of Russians are getting bogged down and some of them are getting killed and some generals got killed. So I guess they're not a state that's 10 times larger than Ukraine and has nuclear weapons.
I don't think it's about who's really getting killed. It's about the progress and, like, the morale that's been down and the kind of, like, feeling that they're getting anywhere. Like, there's been some defectors on the Russian side. Everyone on the Ukrainian side is still super gung-ho about defending their land. And, I've been reading this article a little bit. Like, it does seem to be a lot tied into our failures in the Middle East. And he's saying it's like America is, like, insecure and self-conscious about our trust in these other people. And, like, we don't have enough faith in Ukrainians. It's very strange. I don't know. That's why I was confused by it. And I wanted to get some more input on it.
Well, it's probably like the Biden and Afghanistan thing, right? Like, they just didn't want it hard enough.
They just didn't want democracy good enough.
Yeah, like, because it's constantly framed as if the Afghani people somehow chose to be invaded and then chose to be puppeted by the U.S. and then chose to become Taliban, as if they had any agency in any of that, instead of just being violently seized by one group or another. And I think that's the closest. I mean, it is a fairly good analogy for Ukraine as well, which is you have an ethnically diverse population, some of which are Russian, some of which are Ukrainian, some of which are other things, and they're being, gobbled up by a aggressive, belligerent power and being defended by a different aggressive, less aggressive but still belligerent power, and they have no solution to this. Like, there's no good solution to this. I mean, obviously, it would be nice if Ukraine could successfully defend itself and repel Russia, but, like, whether or not they can achieve that, which seems unlikely, has nothing to do with whether it makes sense for us to flood them with arms and to turn this into even more of a charnel pit. So it is the weird kind of, like, rules lawyery way of saying, can we do more violence, please? No, it's still good. It's still good. Let's shed more shit in there.
People are more competent at winning the violence. So let's keep it going.
Yeah. like so there's arguments, right? Like if Ukraine can win, right, then the argument would go we should help them win as much as possible, which means sending them all the stuff we were talking about, or implementing the no-fly zone, which will start a nuclear war, or somehow getting NATO or the EU more directly involved. And if Ukraine can't win, then the question is what's the alternative? Like negotiating a settlement with the Russians? Is that selling them out? Like how would you best to negotiate the back down if that's the alternative? And those both suck, right? Because like they both involve extreme violence and or capitulation. So no one really has any good answers to this. And so an article like this is like, well, let's at least choose the lesser of evils, which is violence rather than capitulation in their mind. So it's almost like saying, wouldn't it be nice if Ukraine was winning?
I mean, like all their claims have tons of evidence that they're actually winning, but I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, I've looked into it as well myself, just because I thought it was like really not being covered easily in the news, like what is actually happening. And there are certainly some small counterattacks that the Ukrainians have made. They've made some pushback. They've held onto some cities, but like
they've lost tons of
half of their cities, half of their major cities are occupied by the Russians. The Russians have done nothing but gain ground. The Ukrainians have not recovered meaningful amounts of ground. The Ukrainians face enormous shortages of men and material compared to the Russians. Like it seems like a grinding conflict that inevitably loses for them.
It sounds like a lot of our early like invasions in Iraq and Afghanistan, where we came in with the force and the numbers and the shock. We took a lot of land, but as the years go on, as the time goes on, it just devolves into guerrilla warfare, which isn't really a victory for anyone. But the initial surge, we kind of fucked it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's weaker than that because Russia's fighting against NATO trained and armed forces, but yeah, that is basically the same idea. Like if
they got javelins out the wazoo.
If this continues, it will devolve into an insurgency, and thus a long, violent, immiserating war that leaves Ukraine even more than it already is bombed into smithereens because you can't stop bombs unless you have like an Iron Dome, which Israel,
and even then, it's
being given to Ukraine in the first place. So
I don't know. Maybe just because it only happened in the 90s, but then the more recent wars in the 2000s. Maybe this conflict will change America's perspective on who counts as an insurgent, who counts as like a guerrilla warfighter. Because now it's a bunch of white Ukrainians who are the insurgents.
Yeah, now they're just freedom fighters. You just switch language whenever you don't want to say, the bad one. But to me, this conflict, and this is not politically, this is just from like a military science perspective, it reminds me of the American Civil War. Because you have one side which obviously has the numbers and the resources, and the other side which has arguably better training, knows the terrain, is fighting on their home turf, is fighting a guerrilla campaign. And like the Confederacy always kind of knew it was in a bad position in the U.S. Civil War and it was probably going to lose, but they fought to the bitter end because they didn't want to give up. And even though they had just some despicable politics, there's a lot of similarities between the position of the embattled CSA and the Ukrainians, which is that they have fewer men, they have fewer resources, they have arguably better trained men in some cases, they have the home field advantage. They're giving ground in some places and taking it back in others and constantly delaying.
And they feel like they're the ones being tread on.
Yeah. And it's like, look, I wouldn't have bet on the CSA either, I guess is what I'm saying. Like there were a few moments maybe at like, right before Gettysburg or right before Antietam where it looked like they might be able to make a push into the north, but it was just never realistic that they could defeat such a larger and more industrialized power than them. And that's really what we're looking at here. Just Ukraine does not have the infrastructure to defeat Russia. The best they could do is hold on until something is settled.
Right, which is why they're desperately trying to have it come to a compromised peace solution.
Yeah, I don't think it serves the Russian, situation or the Ukrainian situation or the civilians in either case to say like, let's pretend that this is a war that we need to win, literally win through violent armed conflict, because I don't think that is realistic for the Ukrainians. I'm not saying they should surrender, but like, I don't know, like what do you want them to do? They're facing absurd odds, and it's just going to be their civilian population that gets ground to dust in these protracted sieges if they don't negotiate something. So I don't know what we're expecting of them. Like, does it matter to the U.S. papers and British papers and all this stuff that when you're saying, Ukraine needs to win, what you're really saying is they need to fight for years of brutal, like, starvation and disease for their population to try to win something that's unrealistic? I feel like that's just cruelty.
I guess according to the Atlantic, just keep a stiff upper lip and just hope and pray that they win because they're doing it.
Yeah, just bear a violent invasion for 22 years like the Afghani people did. That's all you
No
need
big
to do.
deal. All right, well, there's no way I could have predicted this transition, but it's here. From Business Insider, if a new civil war breaks out in America, here are the 3 places it's most likely to start.
Interesting.
From
And this
Business
has some of the
Insider.
best art I've ever seen.
All right.
So I will show you.
Is the sub headline like, and so these are the companies you should be investing in?
Well, it reminds me of the 3 places to move if the apocalypse is happening. Like those
Oh my
those
God.
insane. So
The
it looks like
The 3
Michigan-
places it's most likely to start are all Democratic states. That makes sense.
I don't know what the middle one is.
You got Michigan, Oregon, and New York. It's
That's
like
Oregon?
I'm pretty
It's
sure.
square. I don't know. I'm not good at geography.
I could go. Look it up.
According to this, Michigan has long been a hotbed of anti-government militancy. Eastern Oregon has a robust secessionist movement, and upstate New York shares little in common politically with the NYC metro area. So apparently, upstate New York's where all the right-wing secessionist cranks are.
Upstate New York sucks generally.
Yeah,
It's a miserable place to spend your
take
time.
that, Buffalo.
Yeah, but what they're describing is true of literally every urban versus rural part of the entire country.
Yeah, but
Like
Buffalo's
urban centers in the South are much more liberal than rural areas in the South. Urban centers in the North are much more liberal than rural areas in the North. Like this is just like they're describing a trend without understanding it.
I feel like this person just chose Michigan because of the Whitmer scheme.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason.
Do you think they're trying to be funny by saying like these are 3 Democratic states? Like it's a reverse Uno. Like they're trying to be like, but well, actually, it's not Mississippi, Georgia, and Texas. What do you think's going on here?
It's very
The
weird.
media's bias.
It's very weird, right? Because you would assume, based on the conspiracy theories on the right about like a race riot or a racial conflict, that it would break out in one of the states that has a very large split between white and black. But the states that they've picked are not the case. In fact, most of them are like average amounts or low amounts of minorities.
That's what's funny. It's like the secessionist movement is almost post-race. Like, yeah, race is part of it, but they hate like white libs more than they hate black people. It's weird. They hate the status quo. They hate Joe Biden. They hate the like deep state more than the racial animus.
It depends. I think there's a lot of different kinds of reactionaries, but
they have enough hate to go around for everyone.
The idea that a bunch of like fiscal conservatives in upstate New York are going to rally around the Confederate flag or something, or some sort of like neo-Confederate ideology, instead of the people who have been basically saying we wish we had seceded 1,000 times by now, like in Texas. It doesn't make any sense. Like there are states that are actually trying to vote to secede. Apparently, the most likely is New Hampshire. Based upon that stupid vote from the other article. So I guess we don't know where everyone is on this, but it just doesn't make sense to me that these 3 states, which never tried to secede before and which are associated with democratic politics, would be the ones where suddenly they want to break away from the country.
Yeah, but here's some Boogaloo boys from Lansing, Michigan.
I mean, I think of these 3, Portland is the one that makes the most sense to me than Portland, Oregon, because it's basically Portland is an extremely quote unquote blue area that is like what you hear about all of these systemic and repeatedly consistent extremely violent confrontations with police, because all the police are then drawn from the vast red rural areas around Portland. It's kind of like a bastion in the middle of it, but it's a very strange, based on the headline only, of course, narrative to try to draw like this is where civil war would start, because all these states are like spread across the country. So what are they going to start with? Like
it's going to be a guerrilla war. It's going to be a resistance. It's not going to be our army smashed into their army.
Yeah, you almost get the sense they're like, okay, pick one West Coast, one East Coast, and one Midwest.
Exactly.
Here is a Oregonian group of people who are arguing to move the border west so that Eastern Oregon can join Idaho.
So that Oregon can become an unambiguously blue state, basically?
And Idaho can be getting fatter and red, yeah.
I actually support that because it would change almost nothing about Idaho.
The autonomous Oregon area.
I mean, so far we've been treating with this article as if it's sane, but let's briefly not do that.
Please.
Does it make sense to be talking about casually having a civil war break out in America in a major publication and just be like 5 cool tips? Like, it reminds me of that, like, places to hide when the world
It's
collapses.
what I just said 5 minutes ago,
Yeah.
Alex.
Well,
Yeah.
apparently I'm sundowning.
Like, less than 5 minutes ago, like 2 minutes ago. Yes, I mean, the media loves flirting with this shit. They've been talking about this for years now. They love covering secessionist stuff. They love talking about when the apocalypse comes. Here's the like 5 stocks you need to invest in. Here's the places you need to move. Here's the best bunkers to buy and live in. Like, they love that shit. That shit gets numbers. That shit sells copies.
Yeah, I mean,
People are reading and fearful about the shit that's on the very back burner of their brain. That's the most terrifying to them, and they extract that out. They have the psychological experts literally telling them, "Here's how you provoke like the biggest fear response to get the biggest dopamine rush when they read your article."
I apologize if you have this article, Jason, but it's like the article I saw last week about from the New York Times about like why we should consider using small load tactical nukes more often in the wake of the Ukraine invasion.
Yeah.
It like sparks that the worst part of the human instinct and brain.
Right. I'm constantly befuddled by how hawkish the media is. Hawkishness is not limited to other countries. They love speculating about internal war. They love speculating about the breakdown of society. They love that near future Mad Max shit. They can't get enough of it.
The funny thing is, despite the fact that the actual like political position of most papers is almost exactly the same as it's always been, the idea of civil war was absolutely terrifying to Americans in the 1950s, in the 1850s and early 1860s. Like, just before it actually began, every paper was like, "This would be the worst thing that's ever happened. We have to do everything to avoid it." And now papers are like, "Wouldn't it be tight if we had a civil war? Where would it happen?" Like,
but here's what's funny.
It's weird.
So the Oregonian guy I told you, his quote is, "The only thing that would kick this off is if they literally took our guns." Which, once again, is not happening in America, despite as much as we may want it. Not happening. So, like, this isn't happening. And yet the media is fawning and obsessing over this.
Also, if they took your guns, that means they already have a plan for how to get your guns, so you're fucked.
Right. So, yeah, it's also
totally
naive.
It's too late at that point.
Yeah.
The time to organize resistance is before you're having to surrender your guns.
Here's my micro media analysis. I watched the remake of Total Recall last night. It's actually better than I thought it would be. But like the whole premise is that who's the dad from Malcolm in the Middle? Who's very famous?
Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston is like the president of Britain. And he's like, "I'm gonna invade Australia because that's the only other habitable land in the near future where all the workers are. And I'm gonna invade really synth like police machine robots that are gonna kill everyone."
It's definitely not 2/3 desert.
So quiet, it doesn't matter. So basically, I'm just imagining that like when the American government actually does come for guns, they'll do it because they have like the synth machines that can kill anyone, like the fucking Terminators that you can't fight against, you can't stop. Like as you're saying, Alex, like if it ever came to that, they'd have a plan. They
Go watch the fucking videos of the U.S. blowing the shit out of ISIS militants who don't even know that they're under attack, and tell me how you do.
Right, or go watch
your
fucking
war against the United States.
That like Bundy guy's friend who whipped his pistol out and they got fucking murked.
Like I don't want to diminish the seriousness of the threat posed by like insurgent militias operating within a population in an occupied country.
Well, yeah, because it's civilian versus civilian.
Right. But that implies that you have the cooperation of most of the civilians in your state to resist a foreign occupier. I don't think most Americans are going to join a bunch of nutters to attack the U.S. government. It's just not a thing. So they do not have the kind of popular support or will needed to meaningfully resist the U.S. federal government. Yeah. There's no organizing principle upon which they would fight like the Confederates had. They're not geographically unified like the Confederates had. They don't have a long tradition of military expertise and training and hunting and honor culture like they had. Like the CSA had a million more things going for it that would make sense for them to succeed, and they still failed. So I just like, and that was with a tech level that was like cavemen compared to what we now have.
Right.
So the idea that the U.S. federal government is going to be defeated by a bunch of like groups of 24 militias scattered across different parts of the country is laughable.
Right. A bunch of dudes with pimped out semi-auto AR-15s. Sorry, it's not going to work. You're going to get wrecked. So this actually leads me into my next article. Because we're kind of discussing what a federal response would be. And you know who the feds love doing? The feds love owning chuds. So this from Yahoo News. More law enforcement agencies are opting not to join the FBI's annual hate crimes report. the FBI loves nothing more than owning idiots.
Yeah.
So, like, if the FBI was actually coming for your guns, they're getting them and they're throwing you in jail and they're going to feel awesome about it because they feel they're so smart.
Yeah, they're hoping you give them a reason to kill
Right.
you.
Exactly. So what do you think about local law enforcement agencies being like, that whole hate crime thing? Yeah, we're just not going to send you the email. We don't want you to be able to track this shit.
Yeah, because half of them are in the militias.
Right,
The
exactly
CRT.
my point. Exactly. I think
Yeah.
this is a great story.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
terribly funny.
FBI's gone woke.
Exactly. Yes, I can. Okay, so this some dude is running for police commissioner in Idaho, and that's his ad. It's like the FBI's gone woke. They want to hear our hate crimes report, and we here's what we do to those hate crimes reports. He just shoots it on the ground. Elect me for comptroller of your ass.
I mean, the FBI love doing this shit because it's the only time of year that they're not the most right-wing people in the room.
Right.
Like, they like to say, like, hey, we might be insanely totalitarian, violent police state support,
Yeah.
defenders and creators, but we're not chuds.
It's like the purge.
All
Where
right.
all year they're oppressing left-wing protesters, but then during the chud purge, they get to just own all the right-wingers for a month straight.
Yeah, and they get to look like James Bond.
Right.
They're like, hey, we get to be the secret agent stopping the hoodlum, disposable villains that everyone can agree suck. So
Right.
you have to love us on MSNBC.
It's the time of the year where the Latinx CIA agent gets her big bonus for getting a right-wing hate crime.
I mean,
Good stuff.
I certainly don't trust the FBI, but it doesn't seem like reporting hate crime should be something that you can opt out of.
Right? Why is this a multiple choice? Why is this optional? Isn't this mandatory with a star next to it before you get to move on to the next thing?
Especially during a time when just as an example, we're seeing year over year, 2021 to 2022, Asian hate crimes are up 300%. Doesn't really seem like we should lose track of those kind of trends. But big of bad. So
Well, it's like the one from a long time ago where it's like they wouldn't feel comfortable if their coronavirus death was reported, so let's just not say that's what killed them.
let's respect them. Yeah, respect them.
Yeah, it would really make the perpetrators of hate crimes uncomfortable for it to be acknowledged. That's why they were.
That's the enlightened libertarian perspective.
Yeah.
Well, see, I would have thought that these cops could kind of do a reverse Uno. It's like, no, COVID killing us is a hate crime. COVID is anti-cop, and this is somehow America and China's fault. So you're the actual hate crimers. That's what I would do if I were them.
Well, I mean, that makes no sense. So I guess that is what they do.
Yeah, I mean, we all know COVID.
Exactly, precisely.
As the news has consistently reported, we all know
You
COVID
foiled me, Alex.
has
Yeah.
intent and
You
belief.
pull the mask off of the big fat
Yeah.
pig cop. It's me.
Yeah.
Oh no! Damn kids.
Old Mr. Jason.
It was old man Jason all along.
All
Yeah. This is.
Let's do my final Yahoo news, which should inspire confidence in the cops.
The last Yahoo.
Black store owner reports robbery, gets punched by officer.
This is every day. I mean, this is 20 times a day, I imagine. I don't know why this one's remarkable, but good to see it's covered.
Not because he's finally suing them after 2 years. And so I guess I have an update on this.
Yeah, I was just reading an article about cannabis dispensaries in California, where the state tried to do some degree of restorative justice by taking people who had been convicted on weed charges and giving them startup cash to start their own case.
Saying they're gonna do that too.
Yeah, and the problem is that the police just show up whenever there's a robbery and start beating the owners because they see a black guy standing around with a bunch of weed, and their instinct just kicks in.
I mean, did you guys see the?
They just react like a predator.
You guys see the director of Black Panther was put in handcuffs for trying to withdraw cash from a bank recently.
It tracks.
Yep.
I think a few years ago, the coach of the Toronto Raptors, upon winning the finals, tried to go in and mosh with his teammates, and the security was like, "Sir, you were a black man at a basketball event in a suit. There's no possible way you're a coach."
Most wild.
And almost arrested him. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And horrifying.
Yeah. So what's the follow up? Do you have any follow up, Jace?
They're suing, and the state's like, "Nah, we're not gonna comment at the time."
Who can say who's in the wrong? Who did what?
Yeah, it sucks.
Unfortunately, very, very.
Ooh, apparently
I'm
the
like,
owner who had just been robbed had a gun, which he's allowed to. And so the cops were like, man has gun. Oh no, he's reloading. Let's go beat the fuck out of him. I'm amazed they didn't shoot him.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's lucky he's alive. Also, think about the restraint he showed in not shooting the robber.
Well, the robber might have gotten away. I don't know. Who knows? I think it was like a standoff. I
Well-
think he probably showed up looking for the robber or like heard him or got away. And then the cops were like, oh no, man with gun must be robber.
But you're saying he had a gun. It was his store. It wasn't a burglary. It was a robbery, which by definition means he was
Oh,
present.
that's true. Yeah.
So he had to be present, and he had his gun, and he didn't shoot the robber.
Maybe he didn't have his gun on him. And so like the robber had a gun and then left and then he got his
Right.
gun. I don't know. I don't know the actual circumstances. The point is the owner is black, the cop is white, and punch him in the face.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed all of that.
yeah. It's like a mere lock recently. It was not the person they were looking for. They busted into his apartment. He had a gun. He didn't shoot at them, and they shot him. It's like you have a gun. You don't illegal gun, I should say. You don't shoot cop who's trying to kill you. You die. You do try to shoot cop, other cop shoots you. It's like,
Well, as you say, once again, cops can't determine whether you have a gun legally or illegally at the moment. They just assume it's crime.
yeah. They
But
don't even
two,
care.
it's what's so astounding about the niche industry of black pro-gun people who are like, NRA associates and like get paid by them to be like, nah, it's empowering to be a black guy with a gun. It's like, no, it's not. You're gonna get fucking killed.
Well, it's because the conservatives talking about size of their mouth. The one that's like, okay, yeah, first the Second Amendment is the only important amendment, and it's just about getting everyone guns. And then it's like, but secretly, it's fine if black people
Like-
get killed because they have guns.
There's this fairly famous former sniper from the military who's black, who does like big, Second Amendment gun activist shit. And it's like, all right, cool, that's your thing. Like you turned your hobby / military, military profession into your like post-military career thing. But some chud's probably gonna kill you at some point. Like just because you look cool, you've got all your tats, you've got like your guns, and you got your like big Second Amendment shirt. Some cops probably just gonna be like, oh, black man with gun, shoot.
Well, yeah, because no matter how much more trained and skilled and professional and intelligent he is, some cop is going to have more institutional
Right.
power than him with 1 year of training and a grudge.
And
That's what we do in our society.
we probably totally disagree with him ideologically in almost everything in his worldview. Doesn't mean like he deserves to get randomly murdered by cop, which is a non-zero possibility for this dude. It's just wild to me.
I mean, I would rather have a gun than not have a gun if I'm going to die anyways by cop. Personally,
I'd rather
but-
go out like fucking go out on your shield.
Just have a last stand? Like, to what purpose?
I mean, I don't think I'm exactly as anti-gun as you two are, personally, but I'm certainly not going to go on defense for someone who's working with NRA to espouse their venal policy prescriptions for.
Well, Alex is actually much more anti-gun than me. I think guns are cool.
Well, let me put it to you this
I
way.
think it's very cool.
My main objection to guns is that most people are using them to kill themselves.
That's
Because
true,
that's much more common than any kind of hostile conflict with someone else. And considering that we have essentially unaddressed like waves of homelessness, poverty, deaths of despair, it doesn't make sense to me to have easy means of killing yourself available to guys who routinely kill themselves with them.
No, you
So-
prefer the Norwegian death tube
Pod.
thing that went from the pod.
I'm just saying, the number one way that guys kill themselves with guns, and guns are more than 90% lethal the first time you use them in a suicide attempt. So, seeing as there's more than twice as many suicides as homicides, that's my main objection. If you wanna fucking argue about the right to defend yourself and stuff, fine, but you can't really say that that's in a vacuum when the main use of the guns is actually suicide.
Yeah,
That's my
true.
problem.
And of course, we have the environmental argument, which is that you're filling birds with lead and gunpowder.
Sure.
But fuck the birds.
So yeah, it's really just that I don't want to enable people who impulsively would kill themselves with the guns.
Yeah, that's a morally commendable.
All right,
Yeah.
so we got our cop punching guy story out of the way.
I mean, we kind of did we didn't breeze past it, but it is pretty depressing. How like uneventful that is.
Yeah, another Tuesday.
Another officer abusing their institutional power.
But I will point out, like, when black people in the United States have tried to have guns and exercise the Second Amendment, they have been disproportionately targeted and killed for having them.
Yeah,
Oh,
That was the
yeah,
whole
absolutely.
reason why, like, the Black Panthers got slaughtered, or why it was justified in the public eye they got slaughtered, was because they were armed. It's like, well,
Yeah.
we talk all the time about how inalienable the Second Amendment rights are. If a white guy wants to bring a fucking, semi-automatic weapon into a Denny's, it's like, hey, it's his right. But if a black guy has a gun legally in his car, he can get murdered for it any day of the week. And we just kind of know this, right? Like, this isn't subtle. This isn't even hidden as a society.
There's a really good video of this guy who, I don't know if he was living there, but he was filming a video in a state that has open carry. And he had his AR-15 on, like, slung on his chest. But he's black. So they just recorded him walking up and down the street. And, like, the first walk he did, a cop saw him and called 8 SUVs, and they all pointed dozens of guns at him. He's like, I thought it's open carry. It's like,
right.
Get on your knees. Stop. And so, like, it demonstrates what we all obviously know is true.
Well, not to mix metaphors, but there's no open carry in a moving train. Right, like if you have a society that is astoundingly as racist and imperialist and colonialist as ours is, saying that there's a universal principle doesn't mean anything because it's never going to be enforced universally.
Right.
If you say everyone has a right to guns, but in practice the law enforcement officers will overwhelmingly disproportionately ignore white people who have guns and prey upon minorities who have guns, then you don't have a universal right to guns. So it doesn't mean anything to say it's in the law.
Right, and it's almost like that's an explicit constitutional violation of equal protection under the law. And so we breach that Constitution every day, the Constitution that these cops say they uphold and protect.
Even if we ideologically want to say, hey, it would be good for every American to have a gun or to have the right to have a gun, which I don't even agree with, but let's even say we did, we're not living in a context in which that is enforceable because we don't have an enforcement apparatus that would do it. So it doesn't make sense to defend that principle when it cannot be implemented. That's what I'd say.
I mean, it's the same reason that I don't think, like, barring people from owning guns based on felony convictions is especially useful either, because the whole judicial apparatus is based upon overwhelmingly convicting people of color for those kind of convictions rather than anything else. So I mean, I definitely think that we should have fewer guns in America. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think we need to reach I just don't see us reaching like an Australia point where everyone hands in their guns and only farmers have pump shotguns from time to time. So I don't know.
The government would either have to pay way more than they're worth, or we'd have to fundamentally solve some of our larger systemic issues,
which would be wonderful.
The gun problem would go away
if people didn't have guns. If we didn't have more guns than people in this country, it would be a much better country.
Seconded.
I mean, we ended like human chattel slavery. I think we could end this. Like, there's. I know it seems impossible because America's such a shithole, but like, we can accomplish pretty impressive things when we actually try.
I disagree. We did accomplish those. It does not mean we can in the future.
I like that the timing of that was no. We actually can't accomplish shit.
No, we can't,
even when we try.
No. Correct. That is my take. We did accomplish those at some point in the past. That has no bearing on the current population and the current institutions and apparatuses that exist, and the current people who run those capable of doing those things.
It doesn't necessarily, but I think that the people in 1865 were way more racist and despicable than even today. So, pick your battles, I guess.
Right, but they never banned guns. They banned child labor.
I guess what I'm saying is
chattel slavery. You're saying?
We have done some pretty impressive things historically.
Yeah, but that was not
going from horrific abuse to less of that. I just don't think that preventing people from walking around with a weapon that can kill 20 people in 5 seconds is something that should be really that hard to argue or convince people in a civilized society.
Yeah, I just don't. Once again, I am very anti Abe Lincoln. I do not think Abe Lincoln did any of the Civil War for the right reasons, and I don't think that any president past FDR could have done the Civil War if it had happened to linger longer. So I don't have confidence in America to pull off anything of monumental seriousness in the near future. I predict us to wilt away like a flower.
You're anti-Abe Lincoln?
Yes, absolutely.
Don't get him started.
I'm a well-known Abe hater.
Okay. He puts him in like the bottom 10 presidents.
He's an absolute scumbag piece of shit. All right, let's move to our final, well, not quite final, but maybe final, paired articles about Top Cop, or former Top Cop.
Donate to our Patreon, and we may do a bonus episode where Jason rants for an hour on how much he hates Abe.
I do my
Alex I slowly leave and allow him to talk to himself for 3 hours.
Doubleheader from Business Insider. Vice President Kamala Harris felt slighted by White House aides not standing when she entered a room. From a book. And
Was
then
she
also,
the Pope?
And then also from like the same day or like the same week, Kamala Harris felt wounded and belittled by the photo Vogue chose for her February 2021 cover, book says.
They're just so committed to shitting on Kamala.
I know, but it's like, one, why do they keep doing this? But two, why is she such a petty loser? It's amazing. Oh, I love these.
Like, so many people are petty losers, but they spend so much time. It's very funny. I like, she's a bad enough person that I enjoy it, but
It's such a bizarre, like, artifact of our modern politics.
I will point out, like, she's not an especially attractive woman. She looks fine.
Yeah,
on that cover.
She looks more charismatic and likable than she does in real life.
That's actually the best smile I've seen her give.
Yeah, she got them low cut Converse. It looked good.
It looks fake and pained as opposed to evil. So, like,
or robotic. Yeah,
I don't understand. Like, this is actually the most human I think I've seen her. What is she complaining about?
I don't know, Alex. We'd have to ask her why she felt wounded and belittled.
The camera people were crouching instead of standing.
I know she's wearing like mom pants or something, so like maybe that was the issue. But like, she chose her outfit.
No, those are pretty good tight skinny jeans, and she's got the nice black jacket.
Like, they have her dressed like she's like a hipster from the 80s or something. I don't really understand.
Right,
why.
She's like Eurythmics. This is not a fashion show.
But still, like, as far as images of her go, it's a lot more flattering than the random like side profile paparazzi photos that usually get published. This is weird.
Or just photos of her like eating shit on stage when she mixes 8 metaphors in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So what is the deal with this? Is this like Death of Stalin? Like, they didn't all get up and salute me, and I was offended.
Well, that part really baffles me. It's like, is that a thing? Did you have to get up and when the vice president enters a room?
It's like, it's like Clarence Thomas goes to the bathroom to take a shit, and everyone there has to get up and salute him.
Yeah, they have to get up because of the shit. Fucking blows out the whole room.
Although he's in the hospital, so
yeah, let's be respectful.
No, I'm saying he's blowing out the hospital's toilets.
Yeah.
That's the joke. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, it belies such a deep insecurity from her.
Right. This is the most insecure thing I've ever heard from someone.
What, like,
yeah.
What does she want? I don't understand what she wants. Like, she wants people to be up there like, oh, Madam Vice President, it's an honor to look in your direction. Like, no one acts like that. It's not the right generation for that.
I think I solved it. She was expecting the Hillary Clinton treatment. She was expecting the way established, like, lifelong Dems treat Hillary as an actual queen. And she's not getting it. And there could be, there's myriad reasons why. But I think she's like in shock that she's not being treated with the same divine respect that the Democratic Party has slovenly given to the Clintons.
Well, maybe she should have bought out the Democratic Party for $20 million and been able to dictate to everyone how they're supposed to treat her.
It couldn't have been that cheap. Come on.
That's what it cost her. But yeah, that's what Hillary Clinton basically sold us down the road for like the cheapest fucking sum of money possible. But that's a separate issue. Yeah, I don't understand what it is Harris imagines modern politics to be. Did you notice what the whole last fucking 4 years of Trump were? Where no one gave him respect and he gave no one respect? Did you notice like the partisan divide?
Right,
the last 50 years where everyone dumps on each other openly?
Right, like, the whole Trump thing is doing like wrestling shit and crotch chopping at each other and making fun of each other and having zero respect. Just because Biden showed up, everything's gonna return to normal? Is she actually drinking the Kool-Aid that things are gonna get back to normal?
I mean, if you want me to get up and stand me into the room, then enter like fucking President Camacho and just start shooting off your gun and drinking energy drinks, because like that would be the only thing that could really have one-upped Trump for spectacle at this point.
Or enter like Bolsonaro and everyone stands up to get away from him.
Yeah. Where he transmits some sort of like unique form of like COVID leprosy that his body has created.
Emu AIDS.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, besides the fact that she has horrible politics and is personally repugnant and unlikable, like, even besides those two obvious reasons why she wouldn't be getting respect, no one's getting respect. No one's getting or giving respect at this point. The only people who get or give respect are Democrats to each other when they need something from each other. It's purely like performative to do some sort of exchange in a totally soulless exchange of resources between individuals.
And even then, it's usually Nancy Pelosi just like shitting on the squad, being like, well, you kind of asked for it.
Well, that's it.
Transactional respect, truly the most earnest form of mutual regard.
Right. And
the Democratic Party, that is currency, transactional.
The irony is, the Republicans, who almost never do the performative respecting anymore anyway, they can't be fucked. They actually do have your back if you're a Republican, because most of the time, if you like go rape someone, they'll be like, "No, you didn't. You're a Republican, so you
the
can't
person
have."
was a dumb bitch.
So the irony is, despite
Fair
their
fault.
total lack of decorum, the Republicans at least fucking roll deep. Whereas if you like touched a woman's jacket while she was asleep on a plane, you lose your Congress seat. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying that Franken's innocent, but like, the Democrats don't give a shit. Like, the Democrats don't actually like you
Right,
or
'cause they're
care about
snakes.
you.
They'll eat their own.
So they might give you that performative respect for like a minute, occasionally, but they absolutely will stab you in the back the instant you are no longer useful to them.
Except, I think there has been a paradigm shift with the Republicans. I think Trump genuinely introduced a crack in the party, support and wall. Like, Trump goes off on all these people that have said bad things about him. Like the removing of committee stuff for Marjorie Taylor Greene, everyone universally shitting on Cawthorn. Like, there is absolutely a Democrat snake queeniness that Trump introduced to the Republican Party, and is kind of here to stay.
Sure, but if the Republicans reacted to Jan 6 the way Democrats would have reacted to Jan 6 if they did it,
Right.
Madison Cawthorn and Marjorie Taylor Greene would have been like put to death.
The equivalent, right?
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, their degree of overreaction would have been like to have a public guillotining of anyone involved in that shit. We'd have had like Joss Hallway up there being like, fucking, I said let them eat corn dogs, and then his head falls off. Like, that's what it would have been.
They would have like drawn and quartered them with donkeys.
Yeah, it would have been the Braveheart, ending.
Yeah,
because that's how Democrats treat each other whenever they're not useful anymore. So the idea that the Republicans were like, we're going to give you a slap on the wrist and strip some committees is like, that's fuck all. These people committed treason. They're like, oh, it sucked. It was they had a PMS. It's like that's what their reaction.
In fact, they were mad that Pence didn't commit more treason.
Like, they did a beer hall push, and they're like, hey, they were just thirsty. It's like, stop. So like, it's just that's the Republican reaction, which is to be as little as possible while saying they did something. Whereas the Democrat thing is like, let's go as over the top as possible to perform as if we're not exactly the same way as them. So yeah,
no one really wants and never do what people really want is pretty much the Democratic thing. Whereas, yeah, the GOP is just like I don't know. I think there's the fact that we have two parties so devoid of real admirable values. Almost that kind of solidarity almost makes me respect the GOP more. It's like, at least be ride or die if you're going to be an evil person, I guess.
Yeah, right. They are a genuine block. They are ideological block.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're team evil, but at least they understand that. They seem to actually have class solidarity as the elite rich pieces of shit. Whereas the Democrats, despite also being elite and rich, don't seem to have any solidarity. They'll play for whatever team will pay them more at the moment. Yeah, it's totally fucking cutthroat and mercenary.
All right, speaking of vultures,
with
our penultimate conceptual article from Market Watch. My son failed out of pharmacy school and has $126,000 in student loan debt. What can we do?
And this is the reason I was saying he shouldn't have a gun.
You have any pointers, tips, and tricks to get out of this? My unemployed, useless, failed son who got kicked out of his school is more debt than God. What do we do?
Forge Joe Biden's signature on an executive order. That's my.
Just do crime.
Yeah, just do crime. That's your only resort.
I don't know. Send him to Ukraine. Like, have him fight the Russians. Like, I don't know. Like, what do you
Take
got?
your own death.
Yeah, join the Foreign Legion. Just something.
Get in on a new cryptocurrency and hope it works. Like, I don't know. I don't know what they're asking for.
Yeah, I have an NFT to sell you.
Yeah.
Right. Just kill it in crypto.
It's just like we don't have solutions for anything, right? Like, most people can't even figure out if they're like $2,000 in the hole, what to do about it.
Become a Doge.
126 is just.
Doge is super cheap right now.
You're fucked.
Just go shoot it to the moon. Go get involved in some MLM or some scam or some grift or some scheme.
But I mean, we're kind of joking, but that is really what you'd get from the sense of almost every other article we read, which is like, oh, how did people get out of this? Well, they either went into sex work online, or they invested in crypto, or they got part of some sort of crazy MLM.
Right. Go work for UPS and work 800,000 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope your son is hot, I guess is my.
Right, just be hot.
Go work for like the Playgirl side of OnlyFans, which is like 1/20th the significance of the other side.
Yeah, find some cougars in your area.
Right, go become
Yeah.
a what do they call that?
Gigolo.
No, not fucking. How old are you? Fucking
What?
like a sugar dad. Find a sugar mommy, whatever it's called. I don't know.
That's still the term that's used.
People do not call each other gigolos, Alex.
Not since the days of Deuce Bigelow have I heard.
Right.
I'm just
Not
saying
since
that,
Rob
like,
Schneider wasn't like
a male
complete
sex
garbage
worker is
anti-vax
sometimes referred
guy.
to as a gigolo.
Did you know Rob Schneider's anti-vax?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
and
he's
like-
a crank in
And
general.
like anti-government. He's like the kind of these Michigan Oregander guys they've been talking about.
Yeah, he's the most likely person to start our civil war.
Oh man, Rob Schneider, the new head of the new
Yeah.
Confederate States.
Yeah.
With Vice President Kirk Cameron.
Oh, God.
Oh, that's good. With like Treasury Secretary Kevin Sorbo.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
Nah, he'll be for Medicare for all soon, according to the internet.
Oh right, yeah.
Secret
Medicare for
a-
Republicans.
Secret ally operator Kevin
Yeah.
Sorbo. And
He's going through the Zach Galifianakis math right now.
when it turns out to fall through, I will be screaming disappointment.
He'll be on Team Rowling with like, I want economic
Right, yeah.
leftism,
I
but
want
I
a safety net for
hate people. Yeah.
So the article
Yeah.
does give serious answers. It gives like income-driven repayment plans, deferment plans, forbearances, how to deal with private loans. But it's like the funny thing is like this guy's fucked. And welcome to the modern schooling system. Have fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Welcome to
funny,
America.
but it is accurate. This is what we're dealing with.
Wouldn't you say pharmacy school?
Yeah, so I think beyond a bachelor program, it's either a master's or doctorate.
That's an enormous amount of debt. Like, it's not uncommon to have tens of
Also,
thousands
he
of
failed
debt.
out. It's like he couldn't afford anymore. Like he didn't have good enough grades. They kicked him out.
I mean, they're saying that, but could also just be like, hey, he burned out like half of people do from grad school, regardless of his grades.
What I'm saying is the question asker, who's probably the mom, was like admitted his academically he did not succeed.
Or maybe my mom's just like a demanding bitch, and it's like framing it that way. Like, we don't know the details here.
I mean,
I don't know anything. It's all submission and answer by expert. It could all be fake. That's a conception.
My dog is gay. What can I do? Like, I mean, this is like one of those ask me, agony aunt questions that's usually posed by an asshole or an imaginary
the
person.
Slate ask me, yeah. But see, this is a little more financially focused, which I like these because they have less of a chance of being fake. Because it's like, my bitch wife wants to take away my 401k from my McMansion, and those are much more realistic.
My fellow journalists can't admit Ukraine's winning. What do I do?
Right. Atlantic watch.
All
right.
There needs to be an Atlantic watch. Someone needs to put the pressure on.
Yeah, don't let him buy a gun. All right, so here I don't know how to end this episode, so what I've decided is I've got a whole section on Elon Musk.
Oh, come on.
Because
That's how we're gonna go out.
Well, listen, so
This how you do me?
so I had one article that was like a Musk article, but the way Google News works is when you share yourself these articles, it then has like suggested other related news.
Yeah.
And each one was just a banger after a banger after a banger. So we're gonna do a total psychological dive on Musk and his recent statements.
Are we?
In 20 minutes.
Uh,
So the first one of his assertions is this. Elon Musk says the US has very, very ancient leadership, believes there's a serious issue with gentocracy.
Gerontocracy.
Gerontocracy, sorry, I can't talk.
I mean, he's not wrong, but it's also a meaningless surface level critique, which is all he ever does.
All right, so one hollow point for Musk. Next one.
Also, like, everyone running was ancient. Like, it was Trump versus Biden versus Sanders versus like none of the young guys even came close. So like, I think this goes without saying. Like, you could have tweeted this 2 years ago, and oh wow, clever. Like, he's a little late to the game on that one.
His next statement. Musk reveals 3 existential threats: birth rate, extremism, and AI.
just sneak some eugenics in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So what do we got here? Neo-Nazi talking points that are blatantly disproven by actual academics.
And which kind of extremism you think he's talking about?
Meaningless radical centrist gibberish about just extremism without any explanation as to what that means, and like Isaac Asimov Converse tier takes. I don't know. Like, The AI one being the most reasonable of these three makes me want to throw up.
I couldn't imagine what a man from the wealthy echelon of South Africa could be saying about eugenics.
Jessica. Oh, that's a good point, Aiden.
I mean, it's like I don't like to like laud someone's history on them, but I don't think with Elon Musk it's a non-factor that his wealth comes from emerald mines in South Africa, where his parents were extremely wealthy, successful people.
Yeah, those older parents of him. So this is from Fox News. Lonely Elon Musk says humans shouldn't live longer. They will asphyxiate society.
We'll see how he feels in like 20 years about this premise. Why is that lonely?
Because they're pulling on this next article, which is from Daily Mail, which is that Elon Musk has become John Wick, I guess. Elon Musk admits he is lonely after his split with Grimes and only has his dog for company now.
They had a baby like 2 weeks ago.
They split?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Named baby 2 Elon Flux or whatever, but the point is Elon Flux, so that'd be a great name.
They have several children together, and just one of them just happened. Is this real?
Yeah. He's like dating some other guy. Who cares? The point is...
Some other guy?
Yeah, or Goro, I don't know. Who knows? Some robot, who cares? The point is, he is now in the very beginning of John Wick, where he's lost his partner. He now has a dog. Can only get better from here.
He lost his partner, who's still alive, and I think still living with him, just not together.
In his like one-room apartment, despite being worth $1 trillion.
Yeah, his one-room apartment.
And here is the final Musk article from Business Insider, of course. Elon Musk says it's very hard to give away money effectively.
I mean, that might be the most correct thing so far.
Sadly.
Quote, if you care about the reality of doing good and not the perception of doing good, then it is very hard to give away money effectively.
The thing is, though, when you have billions of
Elon
dollars...
Musk, known do-gooder.
I don't think the efficacy level really matters that much, because you can give away, $300 million, lose 30% of that, and still be extremely rich and still be doing some benefit to people. Like, even if the corporate charity sector of this country is incredibly usurious and ineffectual, it's like there's no cost to you. It's just like the
it doesn't seem that hard to give away stuff for all the local like soup kitchens around the country. It doesn't seem that hard for Mr. Beast to give a lot of his money away. It doesn't seem that hard for pretty much anyone else. A lot of people do a lot of good in this world, but he's like struggling. Like, if I can't solve all the world's problems at once, it's not worth doing.
I mean, he'll give away millions and still end up richer for it because of how fucked our economy, our economic and financial systems are.
Even if we put aside the fact that I'm reasonably confident he's currently the world's richest man with over $200 billion in his estimated assets, which means he could give away tens of billions of dollars and not feel it.
And a lot of that isn't even just stocks anymore, because he sold a lot of his stock.
So he sold a bunch to get it in cash. Yeah. He has his entire reputation in being this like brilliant entrepreneur and creator and person who could do anything he wants to do. So make your own fucking charity and hire your own people, and then you don't have to worry about whether the people you're giving it to are like corrupt or not using it on the right thing. His entire like public image is that would be trivial for him to accomplish.
But Alex, there's no popular sci-fi license that has demonstrated that yet for him to draw from.
Shit,
Star Trek.
Star Trek is like super socialist, or the original ones. We're not their modern shit. But I forgot. There's actually the biggest one of all that I forgot to link here, which is that he's like upset with Twitter, and so he's strongly and seriously considering making his own social media company.
Yeah, I read that one too.
Because that's what his time is concerned with.
But that's the kind of thing I mean. Like, if he feels like it would be easy to just randomly, suddenly replace Twitter with a comparable but better service, I feel like he has the time to be like, okay, how do I get this money to poor people?
Or just like
it just doesn't seem that hard.
Hire a fucking financial manager who gives like just I want to give to these 8 kinds of good causes. I want to fund cancer research. I want to fund homelessness.
Hey,
have to do it for you.
Here's a prize, for $100,000 for anyone who can come up with the best way for me to spend the rest of the money. Every kid who wants to submit an essay is valid, and then I'm going to hire another 2,000 people with some money to read through them and tell me which ones are the best. Like, you think of how many easy ways you could use money to accomplish this task without doing a fucking thing.
And Twitter already did this. People tweet him every day, like, here's how you could spend your money better. And he's like, I hate Twitter, I guess.
You could literally just pay someone like $20 an hour who speaks the language of the people you want to help to go to their community, talk to community leaders, and wow, you found a way to help them because they have the solutions already. They
Right.
just
What
don't
do
have
they
the
want? What do
funds
they need?
and the resources. It's so fucking trivial. But the real thing is that one, either he doesn't really want to help people at all, or he only wants to help people if it's some kind of imaginary, broad, sweeping change
Yeah.
that he can advertise.
It's that one. If it's so mundane, it's not worth doing. It has to be big-brained for him to do it.
Yeah, we covered this actually a while ago. He went to like the UN, and the UN's like, okay, we could really use some funding for some huge humanitarian project. And he's like, I'll do it if you can prove to me it will
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
And it's
And
like,
poverty and hunger. Yeah.
what the fuck is wrong with you? If it did
His
even like
memes
5% of the
yeah.
way there, then fucking do it.
He will only accept 2,000 IQ memes.
I'm going to hold
Yeah.
onto all these pointless billions until you can prove to me that not holding on to quite as many pointless billions solves everything completely instantly. Bernie Sanders can no longer do anything because he doesn't have enough billionaires. Like it's the same reasoning of just like it's all or nothing. Either I can see the exact perfect outcome as the result of me losing basically nothing, or I won't do anything at all. It's just child.
Which is
thinking.
another way of saying I'm going to do nothing at all.
Right. It's either petty, childish, like I have to see immediate returns on my investment, or it's just cover for never wanting to do a fucking thing and just signaling as if you did so people will leave you alone.
But he's lonely and it's hard. Isn't the life of Musk so complicated and tough?
I mean,
Shouldn't we feel bad for this person?
this is the
Why are there
risk.
8,000 articles a day about this guy's sad life?
This is the risk he's accepted with being a terminally online guy. Is that he accepts the criticism he sees every day as like real attacks on his.
Right? You're right. He is Giga Chad of being online. Oh my god.
I mean, he's one of the most pathetic people I've ever seen. Like someone this wealthy who never has to worry about anything financially ever in his life, who has hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who will jump in front of a train to protect him.
So influential, and he does nothing with it.
And it's just a huge loser.
I also point out Grimes tweeted that she and Musk had broken up again, but he's still my best friend and the love of my life.
Yeah, Grimes is a fucking loser too.
She's so stupid.
So they sound broken up.
It's just like a thrice divorced dad of 4, and he's getting owned.
But this would be like if Woody Allen was tweeting for 30 years after eloping with Sun Yi. It's like, do we really want to know that?
Right, it's like, the same problem with J.K. Rowling. If J.K. Rowling had never joined Twitter and never tried to be an activist and just like died like H.P. Lovecraft, we wouldn't have these influential, like thought leaders poisoning everything they do more and more and more every day, making everything worse. They would just die as a myth.
If Gates had been tweeting like every stupid thing he was doing instead of just doing it privately, he's like, flirted with another girl in the office again, spurned. It's just like why?
Took a flight to the Epstein Island, right? Exactly.
Why? Like, why are you telling us this? These like modern elites don't seem to understand just how fucking horrible they come off.
Right. If you're going to do crime, do it quietly.
They have no sense of like self-preservation or like limits or anything.
Well,
and it's just like Kanye's public blowout, except excuses. He's mentally ill.
I don't think it's not self-preservation. I think they know they're untouchable. It's just they have no filter. They have no manners. They have no table manners. Like what's uncouth to say. They all know they're financially secure forever. Like Kanye's like, I'm $8 billion in debt. No, you're not. He's totally fine.
But it's like they all have like some sort of social dysfunction.
Yes.
So they don't understand like how they come across and whether it's good to keep talking.
Yes, because their brains have been warped by 1, their success, and 2, their influence in media. They have fundamentally warped views of the world and their role in it.
Oh, God.
All right, folks. Well, that was a good 10 on Elon. I don't think it needs more. You can do the rest in your own head.
Handled with Elon and grace.
Yeah, we don't need to get stuck in a hyperloop on this topic.
All right, that was a long one, but I think some interesting articles, some interesting banter.
Oh, also, if your son failed out of school and owes $126K, go ask Elon Musk for help because he doesn't know what else to do with the money.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of a tweet. Do you know who Nate Diaz, the fighter, is? Anyone?
I mean, I know you talked about him a lot. I don't know him personally.
He's very funny. He's from Stockton, California. Some guy tweeted him like, "Yo, I put a bet on you in a fight and you lost me money." And he was like, "I'll hook you up, bitch." He's like, he was like, he was willing to pay people as long as he could like deride them for being an idiot. And then some other guy's like, pay my student loan debt. And he was like, fuck you.
I like that he's paying back someone who is probably engaged in some sort of like illegal gambling, but not someone who was trying to get educated.
It was very funny. He's a really cool character.
Kind of little bitch goes to school.
You're betting on my ass.
All right, folks. Remember to bet on Nate Diaz and have yourself a good one.
Tweet him about it. Even if you win, just see if you can double dip.
Yeah, just
Make like fucking Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, double my earnings.
Yeah.
All right,
All
everyone,
right,
bye.
cool. See you later.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential workers podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.